This is a video on who is the hardest punching heavyweight champion of all time. Now I'm only going to use heavyweight champions in this video, and the reason is because champions are the only people that have been at the top level and fought a lot of good, solid heavyweights with good defensive skills and a decent chin, so you can actually get a good gauge of how hard they actually punch, because there's no point of looking at heavyweights and maybe just fight lower ranking opponents who've got good knockout rates, like for example Ernie Shavers. So I'm going to start from Sonny Liston and work my way up, going through all the champions. So we have Wladimir Klitschko, Mike Tyson, George Foreman, Lennox Lewis, Vitali Klitschko, Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, and Riddick Bowe. They're the 8 champions I'm going to use in this. So the first thing, we're going to try and do this objectively. So the first thing I'm going to look at is how many opponents have these guys knocked out that have never been knocked out before in their careers. And this isn't just going to be while they were champion, this is going to be throughout their careers. So I've looked through all their records, and I've had a look at how many boxers they've knocked out that haven't been knocked out before. And being able to knock out an opponent that has never been knocked out before is very impressive. Just like Luis Ortiz just did there on Saturday, knocking out Brian Jennings, who'd been in there with some hard punchers before and never knocked out. It's impressive if you get someone that can punch that hard, who can knock someone out with a solid chin and good defensive skills. So I've counted them all up, and the person that's KO'd the most opponents that have never been knocked out before, I'll put it in order. Wladimir Klitschko is 19, so he's number 1. Number 2, Riddick Bowe, he's got 11. He's number 2. Then it's Vitali Klitschko, he's knocked out 10, so he's number 3. Joe Frazier is 4th with 8. Then it's a tie between George Foreman, Lennox Lewis, and Mike Tyson for number 5 spot. They've all knocked out 6 opponents that have never been knocked out before during their careers. And then last is Sonny Liston. He's knocked out 5 opponents that have never been knocked out before during his career. So he's 6th place. And I think the best way to assess who punches the hardest is you need to put them all on the same level. So you need to compare them all against the same kind of size of opponent, because it's unfair to be using opponents like Sonny Liston was fighting in the 1950s and 60s, because a lot of them opponents, less than half of them, were cruiserweights, and it is easier to knock out opponents when they're lighter. Now, a lot of people might disagree with this, so I've written out a chart to prove it. I can use quite a lot of different examples, but we'll start with Muhammad Ali, for example. When he was fighting opponents that weighed between 175 to 184 pounds, he knocked out 100% of them. But when they got larger, over 215 and over pounds, which is about the size of roughly the size of a modern heavyweight. They actually weigh a bit more than that, but we're just going to use over 215 pounds. He only knocks out 46% of them. It's the same with Joe Frazier as well, 100%, but when it gets over 215 pounds, it drops right down to 37%. For Shavers, between 185 to just under 200 pounds, he knocked out 93% of them. Then it dropped down to 45% over 215 pounds. Pretty much everybody suffers the same problem. Mike Tyson's the same. Opponents under 200 pounds knocks out 100% of them. Opponents over 230 pounds, he knocks out only 64% of them. Brewster as well, lighter opponents from 200 to 215 pounds, he knocks out every single one of them 100%. But over 230 pounds as well, it drops to 59%. So what this shows is the larger the opponent gets, the better punch resistance he has. And these aren't the only examples. If someone tries to think I'm trying to cherry pick examples here, I'll show some other ones as well. For example, Ken Norton as well, under 200 as for example, his average knockout rate 66%, but for opponents over 215 pounds it falls to 55%. I mean, the list goes on, and it happens pretty much for every heavyweight. The only one it doesn't really happen, a few that it doesn't happen with, is like Sonny Liston. He actually knocks out more people as they get heavier, but it's very rare. On average, it's a lot harder to knock out heavier opponents. So we're going to use opponents over 215 pounds, and it only include the opponents, the heavyweights have fought over 215 pounds. So everyone's on a level playing field there. They're not using cruiserweights that heavyweights aren't allowed to fight anymore. And we're only going to use the knockout rate against opponents that have a good winning record. We're not going to use opponents that get knocked out easily or lose or aren't very defensively skilled. So I've only excluded opponents that have 25% or over percent losses on their record. So for example, if you have 30 wins and 10 losses, you're excluded because you're not got very good defensive skills. You're not good enough to be one of these opponents. So this is how I've scored it at the end. Sonny Liston has knocked out 2 out of 2 such opponents. So 2 opponents that are over 215 pounds and have got good winning records. So that's a 100% KO rate, so he's placed as number 1. Now, obviously, if he's only fought 2 of these opponents and knocked out 2 of them, it's not a very good indication of his punching power, but, well, he's number 1, so there's nothing you can do about that. So, Sonny Liston's number 1. Number 2 is Vitali Klitschko. He's knocked out 20 out of 25 such opponents, so that's an 80% knockout rate. So he's number 2. Number 3 is Wladimir Klitschko. He's knocked out 36 out of 34 such opponents, so he's got a knockout rate of 77%. So he's number 3. Number 4 after that is Riddick Bowe. He's knocked out 8 out of 12 opponents, so that's 67%. After that, Lennox. He's knocked out 16 out of 24 opponents, 66% KO rate, so he's number 5. Number 6 is Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson has knocked out 15 out of 24 such opponents, so that's a KO rate of 63%, so he's placed number 6. Number 7, George Foreman. He's knocked out 10 out of 17 opponents, that's a KO rate of 59%, so he's number 7. And number 8 is Frazier. He's knocked out 3 out of 10 such opponents, so he's got a KO rate of 35%, so he's last at number 8. Now, that's an objective assessment over a period of their careers of who's got the hardest knockout rate. Obviously with Sonny Liston, he's only fought 2 opponents that actually fit the bill, so it's not really a good judge. You really want him to be facing at least 6 or 7 opponents that are kind of like that to get a good judge of what their KO rate is. But that's an objective assessment of who punches the hardest. So Sonny Liston's number 1, Vitali Klitschko's number 2, Wladimir Klitschko's number 3, Riddick Bowe's number 4, Lennox Lewis is number 5, Mike Tyson is number 6, George Foreman is number 7, and last is Frazier at number 8.